一口食べると常夏のリゾートにいるようなトロピカった気分。
No, Manatsu, I'm sorry, but you're not invited. Believe me, I much prefer you over this glutton any day. We've been in the middle of a fight. Guess they really are giving up on trying to tell a coherent story in this show. But yeah, as usual, Yui was the damsel in distress who needed to be rescued by her simp, Prince Charming. However, because Nubazo had some Mickey Mouse ears made of teaspoons, he managed to reflect any energy attacks that I don't think Takumi has ever used before. But I guess they decided to give it to him just for this episode at least. Or, you could just punch it, but then I guess we wouldn't have a main conflict for this episode now, would we? And they just defeated it off screen. No big deal really, considering what's going to happen later in this episode. But still, I'm not a huge fan of the setup for this conflict of Takumi feeling bad. He made a little strategic mistake, as it does feel a little orchestrated, especially when he already has a good reason for not wanting to get too close to the Precure and risk exposing his father's secrets to Rosemary. If anything, I kind of wish they focused more on this conflict and not need to involve a certain someone to spell out everything for us.
伝説のクレープ？あれってすごく美味しいのよね。考察ありがとう。
Like, while this narration on its own wasn't too bad, she just kept on going, expositing stuff about this dude named Minato, and his relationship with Takumi, as well as some lady in the hospital named Sakurai. It's all stuff that should be told to us visually, or at least exposited by the actual characters of the show, and not just be a cheap shortcut for the writers.
浅江さんは湊さんの幼馴染です。
Everybody got that? Good!
Anyway, this dude wanted to reproduce a legendary crepe for his hospitalized friend, but couldn't recollect what sort of filling it had, and no, this didn't involve narcissists yet, and was just a normal case of forgotten memories. Still, Takumi believed that Yui might have known what sort of crepe it was because her black hole stomach has sampled everything in their town, so he volunteered to recreate it for him. And speaking of our main lead and her insatiable eating habits... unless that's for competitive eating, I really don't think you should put that on your menu, at least not in this economy. Yeah, a little pet peeve here, but I personally don't like it when shows like this kind of encourage bad and wasteful eating habits like this. I guess the intro arc for the Dessert Cure required they do a bunch of sweet episodes in a row, as though this were Kira Kira Season 2, and thankfully, this seems like it's going to be the last episode for it. Hopefully, they can start encouraging some healthier eating habits for better growth. Speaking of which... Oh no, she turned into Miku Maikawa. Look, if she does any of that fake meowing, then I'm done. But yeah, they just kind of offhandedly introduced Komi Komi's next human form, though thankfully she does speak a little more coherently now. It still doesn't really make me care about this season's fairies, but I guess they also do need to start building towards that upcoming movie that I don't really have much to say about. Anyway, Takumi then arrived, and after explaining the situation, Yui just kind of roped him into recreating the crepes with them. I guess this is meant to help build their relationship, even though I'm still not on board for this ship, when one of the characters clearly still has no idea about the other's feelings towards them, and we got the same old song and dance. Oh well, at least the actual cooking scene was actually really good. Seriously, I personally found this to be the best part of the episode, as not only do I personally just like watching characters cook, they also established Takumi's skills, and at least built up Amane a little more, as she was able to point out how different types of flours could affect their crepe batter. And while most recipes I've looked up for crepes seem to suggest all-purpose flour, it does seem like Japan has a lot more variety in their powdered grains, as I even kind of learned when recreating some of Kira Kira's confections. It's all really fascinating, and I kind of wish they went more into the details of making crepes, like how you're supposed to produce just the right amount of gluten, but whatever, overall good stuff. And as a result, it did kind of overshadow my other usual favorite part of these episodes with the comedy duo of these villains, though this was at least funny enough just for the frazzled narcissist and another disinterested salute because no one should want to do this anymore. Later, they let Minato taste one of their crepes and we're going to let him take another to Sakurai, but then we got a more realistic excuse why he didn't just immediately go to see a hospitalized acquaintance even without a crepe. As it turned out, they got into a little fight beforehand, so it was just kind of awkward to go. This was actually a good twist, as it's kind of difficult to say what's the right thing to do in this situation. Too bad it was kind of ruined by...
深いため息の原因はクレープじゃなく喧嘩したからだったのね。
You know what? Add 2 since I held back on the last one.
考察ありがとう。
Still, they did at least accomplish their mission, as the crepe could at least act as a good icebreaker between the two, but still, it left Takumi feeling a little dejected, as yeah, it was an awkward situation that he might have butted in a little too much into. It was a good moment for him that even tied back into the episode's earlier conflict pretty well. However...
それなら、このクリスタルシュガーボトルにメッセージを添えてみては?
Have I mentioned yet how the product placement this season in particular really annoys me? Like seriously, they glorified this candy as being just as, if not a better apology item than the crepes that Takumi spent much of the episode making, which I can tell you are not easy to make. Look, I can withstand a little product placement in the show as long as it doesn't get in the way of the plot, or in this case, dilute it. And yeah, I know these things are going to be used a few more times in this episode, but I still feel like they're unnecessary, especially their last usage, but we'll get to that. Anyway, Takumi at least got a good showing for his integrity by going with Minato to the hospital. And this led to a cute scene as the two old friends clearly had feelings for each other, which I guess was supposed to parallel Takumi and Yui, even though these two in this one scene had better shipping than these two in 22 episodes. Still, Sakurai ended up bringing up old memories of the legendary crepe, which of course led to...
そういえばなんでクレープ届けようと思ったんだっけ?
But oh well, as long as you have this very tasty looking bottle of hard candies that you'd buy at any Precure right now, then I guess that's all that matters. And we got our actual fight of the week with a familiar looking monster.
にゃ？あのウバウゾー、なんかこの前のウバウゾーと似てない？
Yeah, it's almost as though the show's budget is being slashed. Also, yeah, thankfully, we got the 4-member variant of the team transformation, so at least a little less of the episode was used up by the sequences. Anyway, the monster, while similar, did have some significant differences, like switching from tea to tablespoons, which I guess tripled its power. Well, yeah, it actually kind of did, and showed that this dude was at least learning from his mistakes. Though, so was Takumi, as even though he hesitated at first... Well, I see someone mains Mario and Smash. Good choice. Nah, but seriously, this was an all-around awesome scene for Takumi, again showing his integrity and resolve, with him even pulling a Kamen Rider Ichigo and Nigo with Yui. Nice. And they finished it off with the original trio's group finisher. Oh yeah, that was a thing, wasn't it? With that, the episode ended with everyone exchanging their little product placement, except for Kokone, as I guess they needed a cheap hook for the next episode.
Oh, my favorite.
This episode balances out to okay-ish for me, mostly thanks to Takumi, but there's also a lot of things that are holding it back. As I've said before, I do think he's one of the characters carrying the show, as he's arguably had one of the most consistent arcs, cock-blocking and all. But my usual annoyances with this show also reared their ugly heads, and even worse in some ways. Still, can we all agree on one thing? A rider kick will always be better than a rider punch. It's just a fact of life. Just as a spotlight episode for Takumi, this certainly did not disappoint. Throughout this episode, our little magical boy just showed a lot of good determination and resolve. And while his initial conflict did feel a little forced, it was still a good basis for the rest of the episode, with his doubts really piling up, though never actually getting to the point of retirement, but whatever, clickbait titles are nothing new for the show. And regardless, it was still cool to see him mostly nut up on his own, and push forward to even provide a pretty sweet fight this week. Of course, the cooking scene was just as good, as again, I like it when they talk about food facts in this show, and kind of wish the narrator could provide some extra details that the characters couldn't, rather than her usual intrusive expositions. That plus the product placement stealing focus from my boy's crepes kind of annoyed me, but still, it didn't really ruin the episode, and overall, this is just another okay outing. And while I do hope the boys of this magical girl show don't take too much more of the spotlight, I also just want to see more of these two together, as rivals of course. If you haven't seen it yet, we just barely managed to get that U6 Ranger video done before the weekend. There was just a lot we wanted to squeeze into this first part, with some sections like the analysis of Kenichi Joji from Digimon Adventure 02 going a little longer than expected. Still, do check it out if you're at all interested in listening to some guy ramble on about these extra heroes. Don't worry, we at least kept the Tommy Oliver section short. And until next time though, farewell for now my friends, and if you'll excuse me, I'm gonna try my hand at flambeing. This is fine. No problems at all.